Thank you for joining us all on this lovely Thursday evening to learn about my favorite type of kittens, transitionals. So I just want to make sure that you guys all can access the chat because we're going to be doing lots of chatting throughout the presentation. Kelly is here to help answer questions, and we will stop and do questions throughout the session. If you ever have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask aloud. Otherwise, just type in the chat. This is meant to be totally interactive. So, you know, the more you guys give for this presentation, the more you'll get out. Okay, so today we're going to be talking all about weaning and what it means to provide an appropriate environment for your transitional kittens. We're going to talk about gruel and what that means to feed gruel. And then we're going to talk about the really common things that we see in our kittens, which are pain, nausea, diarrhea, vomiting. It's our bread and butter here in transitional land. So there are going to be some graphic pictures. And if you guys are a little bit squeamish, just be aware, transitionals are always going to be some of our most challenging babies. So I want you guys to answer in the chat, who do you think is the most vulnerable age group of kittens, the most at risk for illness or death while in foster? Who's the most vulnerable? Is it the newborns? Is it the bottle babies? Is it the weaned kittens? Is it the kittens that are already out in foster? And you're totally right, it's under 8 weeks. Yep, it's the transitionals. So even though people think about the bottle babies, the neonates, the newborns as being very delicate and having high mortality, which is true, the transitional kittens actually are statistically more likely to get ill and die than the newborns, which I think is a very interesting fact. People think that the newborns are easier or are harder, right? But I truly believe that the transitionals are the hardest group that we deal with. I want you guys to be aware that when kittens wean naturally in the wild or with their mom, they are weaning very slowly over many months. They are nursing until they're almost 3 to 4 months old. They might try solid foods around 4 weeks of age, but that does not mean they're weaned. They're going to keep nibbling at their own pace, but really getting most of their nutrients from their mother until they are much older. When we have transitional kittens, we just, you know, bang them into the wet food and say good luck. When we're talking about transitional kittens, we're talking about these 4 to 6 week old babies. They are just trying out food for the first time. They're just getting their teeth erupting. They're learning how to use the litter box. They're walking around. But they are very much still big bottle babies. These guys are around the 1 pound mark, and they are used to having their mom's milk. They're not used to formula because these guys are what we call hot off the street. These are kittens that are coming to the shelter as transitionals. And that's very different than a bottle baby that's raised in foster, because these guys are used to formula. We know more of their history. We can get them nursing, and the weaning process is much more gradual. It's much more controlled and easier. So we're not going to talk about weaning of bottle babies today. We're only going to be talking about these hot off the street guys that have the unknown history. They're used to mom's milk, and they are the most challenging kittens to deal with. So what do you guys think happens when we take a 4-week-old kitten that's used to mom's milk and a little bit of Fancy Feast, and we suddenly abruptly wean them? They get no more mom's milk. They're stuck in the shelter or in foster with Royal Canin or Fancy Feast. What's going to happen? Yep. Anne is on it tonight. Anyone else? Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. They're just going to get horrible tummy upset. So this is a problem because these little babies literally do not have the enzymes in their stomach and in their intestines to digest meat. They are designed to digest milk, and as they get older, they get more and more of these enzymes to be able to digest the meat. But we just cold turkey them onto meat. They're going to get indigestion. They're not going to be able to digest their nutrients, which means they're going to lose weight. They're going to have malnutrition. That food's just going to pass right through them undigested. They're going to have the bloating, the gas, the diarrhea. They're going to feel terrible, nausea, vomiting. And if left unchecked, this can lead to severe dehydration, severe infections such as sepsis, and then death. So it is a very, very serious problem. It's the greatest hurdle that these kittens are going to have to overcome when they come to the shelter and then go into foster. So that was a bit of a background about why these transitionals are so delicate, and we need to really vigilantly watch them to make sure that they do well in foster. So now we're going to switch gears to talking about how we house them, how we ensure they are going to succeed. With your transitionals, I want you to think about them as giant bottle babies. They are glorified bottle babies. They are not the same as weaned kittens. You do not want to let your transitional kittens run around the house or be left in a bathroom, because they are going to get cold. They're going to potty outside the litter box, and it's just not a good environment for them. They want to be kept more like bottle babies, which is a small environment. It's warm, it's toasty, everything they need is very close, and you're able to monitor them and protect them from drafts much more easily. We really recommend the soft-sided playpens, as seen on the left. They have a zip around the top and should have a solid bottom so the kittens cannot escape. Also an option are large rodent cages, rabbit cages, ferret cages, things with narrow bars. I really like these for my very sick babies because they have the hard plastic bottom, which is very easy to clean. With your transitional babies, again, think about them as bottle babies. They need the heat, they need the humidity. As you're probably used to the newborns being kept very warm, very toasty. These transitionals should be kept just the same, especially because many of them are going to be coming to you sick or will become sick once they come into your care. They really need to be kept very toasty, and that means giving them a heating pad until they're 100% fully weaned. And honestly, we recommend that your kittens should always have a heating pad no matter their age, and let them choose if they want to be on it or not. All right, so onward to feeding, the really fun stuff. Just like a weaned kitten, your transitionals are going to want fresh water and kibble at all times. You're going to change the water and change the kibble every day or so, or when it gets dirty or spilled or soggy. Just like you would for a weaned kitten or an adult cat, you want the fresh water and you want the fresh kibble. They're probably not going to eat much of the kibble or drink much of the water at first because they're effectively bottle babies. They don't know what to do with it, but leave it out, keep refreshing it, and they will get used to it and they will start nibbling on it over time. Okay. So we do provide a feeding chart for our transitionals, and this is focusing on transitionals that are eating gruel, which we're going to talk about in a second. We're talking about wet food. And I want you guys to notice that the hours between feedings is actually pretty similar to bottle babies. We're talking about feeding them canned food every 4 to 6 hours for a 4-week-old kitten, or every 6 to 8 hours for a 5-week-old kitten. Don't worry, you're going to get a copy of this chart, so you don't need to memorize it. But just be aware that we're talking about feeding them much more frequently than a weaned kitten, where you might feed them only 3 or maybe 2 times a day. This is a much more intensive age group, again, just like bottle babies, so be prepared to feed them every 4 hours if you need to. All right. So let's talk about gruel, or I think Kitten Lady calls it slurry. I think, judging by the list of everyone we have here, you guys know gruel and slurry. So how do you guys like to make your gruel? What's your magic recipe for making your gruel? And just go ahead and type that in the chat. Do you have a favorite flavor, a favorite brand? What do you like to mix into your gruel? Okay. And do you need 1 to 4, 1 part wet food, 4 parts of a liquid? All right, what liquid do you like, Anne? All right, excellent. Yep, I agree. Darla, what do you like? I know Glenda, I know you've made formula before. Ooh, yeah, the juice of the wet food. Excellent. So there's a lovely variety here of nice recipes. These are all great. So gruel is a combination of wet food and some sort of liquid, usually formula. It can be the juice of the wet food, it can be broth, it can be just plain tap water. It doesn't matter, but you're basically watering down your wet food with something to make it into nasty oatmeal or a thin, soupy gray sludge. So depending on how much water or how much formula you add, it's going to change the flavor, it's going to change the consistency and the texture of your gruel. And that's very important because your babies are going to be picky. And it is your job to be chef kitten and determine what is their favorite type of gruel. I recommend Royal Canin. Mother and Baby Cat is my favorite go-to gruel brand, but you can use any brand of wet food that is relatively smooth and easy to mush up. I like to start with a half a can of wet food and then a couple of spoonfuls of warm water just to get it loosened up. So it's not going to be totally liquid. It's going to be more in the vein of soggy oatmeal, thick rice pudding. And so see how your kittens do with this. It's pretty similar to wet food, but just watered down with a little bit of warm water. You're gonna want to have your warm gruel on a shallow plate. I really like using soy sauce dishes or any sort of side dish, which is flat. You don't wanna give them a big old deep dish because they will just walk right in it and they'll go swimming and it's gonna be a big mess for you to clean up. I really recommend feeding them outside of their house on a towel or a pee pad. As you can see, they make a huge mess. They just go swimming in their food. Give them a small amount, just a spoonful, and let them have at it. That way they don't need to completely bathe in their food. Let them eat what they can, and you can always add more to the plate. And then after eating, we're gonna clean up our face and our paws and probably the rest of the kitten. If you guys have ever done transitionals, you know they are, you know, they look something like this. They will just smash their face into the food. They will put their paws in it. Their chest will get in it. Food's going to go everywhere. That's a good sign because they're hungry and they want to eat, but they are not very delicate or dainty kittens yet. They're going to be messy munchkins. So after each feeding, it's your job to be a mama cat and use a warm, wet washcloth to clean them up. Baby wipes tend to just push the food around. So we really recommend washcloths to grip into that food and get all of that meat juice out of their fur. This is a white kitten, as you can see in the picture, and he has yellow and brown meat juice on him. So at the end of cleaning, the kitten should be white again. If your kitten is still stained yellow or brown, you haven't done enough cleaning, get another wet washcloth, go in there and clean them out. You're gonna wanna make sure that during this cleaning process, you don't soak your baby because that can make them cold. So use just a damp washcloth, and then after the cleaning, once they're white, you're gonna dry them with a dry, warm, fluffy towel, and you can fluff them up with a toothbrush or a brush or a flea comb and give them a nice groom so they look beautiful and fluffy. Okay. So in a perfect world, all, yes, we could lick them, Kazuhiro-san. In a perfect world, everybody's kittens would just eat their gruel. You would bring them home, you would just add a little bit of hot water, they would eat their gruel, you'd clean them up and they would grow, it would work. But as you guys who have ever done transitionals before know, that is not the case. Many times you're gonna offer them this basic gruel they're going to sniff it or walk away. They're going to step in it and just start screaming at you. They're not going to eat it. So for those of you who have done transitionals before, how would you recommend trying to get them to eat this gruel? What are some ways we could troubleshoot these babies? Kazuhiro recommends hand feeding or syringing. Rebecca also says hand feeding or put on the roof of the mouth, spoon feed, finger feed. You guys nailed it. So you're talking about all these ways we can help get the food into the kitten. Are there things we could do about the gruel itself to make it more appetizing? You got to put your cat chef hats on. Yep. Perfect. Glenda, you nailed it. Yep. So we could try adding kitten formula, or we could change the type of wet food. Great. So whenever you have a kitten that is not eating their gruel right off the bat, you need to start troubleshooting. You can't just let them go hungry. So the first thing you should think about, as you guys mentioned, you know, we'll talk about the assisted feeding, trying to get them to eat the food. But another thing we should think about is the type of recipe we're working with. Is our gruel too lumpy? Is it too liquidy? Is it too cold? Do we want to try using formula or juice or broth instead of water? Do we want to try a different brand of wet food? So you can see that with each of these different options, we could end up with, you know, I can't do math right now, but, you know, quite a few numbers of combinations. So with my gruel babies that I bring home, I often make a little kitty buffet, and I'll give them maybe 6 different options to pick from. And, you know, one with formula, one with this brand of food, that brand of food. I just make a very small amount, and then they will literally walk to the one that they like. So I know what their favorite type of gruel is. You don't have to do this. This is just something I found to be useful. But you need to be aware that the food itself might be the problem, and you need to figure out what it is that your kittens like or don't like. Sometimes we can get away with just changing the method of feeding on the plate. I've had many kittens that like their gruel with just a little bit of broth or chicken juice or formula poured over it. Some kittens like their food fluffed or mashed into a pulp or pretty rock solid. A lot of kittens like it pushed to the edge of the plate so they can easily lick it up. Because these guys are not used to this biting motion quite yet. They're used to more suckling, which is like this, which is licking. So in some cases, you're going to elevate the plate and let them lick it off of the plate. You know, things that you can do with the plate and the gruel to try to get them to eat. You're going to notice that some kittens have a natural bite and they're really going for the food, and you're going to want the firmer, more easy to access mounds of food for them to bite. And other kittens are really going to want to lick. They're going to be very happy getting that more soupy gruel, and they will not need anything special on the plate. It just needs to be deep enough that they can get a good amount. These are 2 of my recent babies. The one on the left would not eat food. That's actually just plain Fancy Feast, but I had to dribble a tiny bit of formula on top, and then she would eat the rest, even though there wasn't formula mixed into it. So she was barely a transitional, just gained weaned, and she wouldn't eat it unless I pushed it to the edge of the plate. The kitten on the right would only eat the food that was fresh out of the can and dumped out. Once I mashed it, he wouldn't touch it. He liked it super duper firm and easy to bite those edges. So I let him just eat the edge, and then I would get him a new can if he needed it and feed the rest to his sister. But both of these kittens, there was nothing special about the food. It's actually just Fancy Feast. That's just me playing around with the bowl and the way the food was presented to them. And then finally, you guys nailed this. With each of your gruel recipes, if they're not going for the food on the plate, you need to escalate to assisted feeding. And that can be with your finger, with a spoon or a stick or a syringe. With hand feeding, you do need to be aware that if you put meat on your hand and give it to your kitten, if they're very hungry, they might nibble on you, they might bite you. Please don't routinely hand feed large amounts of food. It's great just to give them that little sniff, shove it in their mouth so they get the flavor. But if they're really chomping and having a great time with that food, get them onto a spoon, get them onto a plate, because otherwise you're more likely than not to get bitten. Spoon feeding or using like a wooden stir stick, popsicle stick can be a really great way just to elevate that food so that it's higher up for the kittens. Because again, they're used to suckling like this on mom. They're not used to eating like this quite yet. So this does work for the thicker gruels, but honestly, spoon feeding is going to be a less commonly successful method for most of you guys. The real bread and butter is going to be your syringe feeding. So syringe feeding is using a medical syringe, which has what we call a slip tip. And so this is a syringe without a needle. It's got a conical tip where the formula can come out fairly easily. So it's not sharp, it can't hurt them. You're going to make sure that your gruel is very smooth, or at least smooth enough that it's not going to clog the syringe. Because if your gruel is very thick, you won't be able to draw it up in the syringe and you won't be able to give it to your baby without making a volcano. It is extremely tedious to syringe feed babies. Really expect your babies to drop half of their food out of their mouth and to very, very slowly chew, very, very slowly swallow. And it's going to be messy. There's going to get formula and gruel everywhere. So syringe feeding is such a critical skill for you guys to learn. I really recommend that everyone is extremely comfortable syringe feeding because it saves lives. It's one of the best skills you can learn, and it's essential for your transitionals. When you are syringe feeding, I recommend that you go in the side of the mouth. The kittens are going to have teeth in the front and the back, which are our canine teeth, and sorry, not the top and bottom are the canine teeth, and then the chewing teeth in the back are their premolars. There's a space between their canine teeth and their premolars right here where you can shove the syringe in. I don't recommend going in like this because they are going to just chew on it and they're not going to enjoy it very much. Give them just a mouthful at a time, about half a mil, and let them swallow. As you syringe feed your babies, and actually, Kazuhiro, if you are interested, I do have a syringe baby right now. So after class, I could show you guys how I syringe feed him. So as you put this food in their mouth, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to either spit it out entirely, and it's going to be this waterfall down their mouth, or they're going to chew it a little bit, smack it around, and then swallow. If they are swallowing it, that's great. Let them chew, let them swallow, and then give them another mouthful. Do not continually force feed a baby that is spitting out the food. If they are just completely rejecting that syringe and they are kicking it away, they are gnawing on it, they're throwing their head around like a crazy, if it's a waterfall out their mouth, that means they really, really, really don't want it. They probably are nauseous, they probably hate that food, and if you force feed them, number one, they're not going to get enough nutrients. Number two, you're going to basically teach them that syringes are scary, people are scary, they do mean things to me, and you're actually going to create what's called a food aversion, which teaches the baby a very strong memory that gets imprinted in them that food is the same as stress, that food is the same as pain or diarrhea or tummy upset, and they will not be able to eat that food in the future. So syringe feeding should be for babies that want it. If your baby is rejecting the syringe, you need to talk to the shelter and we need to come up with an alternate plan because force feeding is not the solution. So a summary of troubleshooting, For your gruel, we're talking about changing the recipe of your the recipe of your gruel. We're talking about changing the way they eat on the plate. We're talking about changing the way that you are giving the baby the food, and really mixing and matching, you know, textures and flavors and consistencies to find out what works for your baby. It's your job as a transitional foster to have all of these things in your toolkit and to troubleshoot and to mix and match to find out what works for your baby. You'll know it's working when your babies are actually eating happily, they got great poops, and they're going to be gaining those 15 grams a day, which we want. If your baby is still struggling, they're not eating very well, you haven't found a recipe they like, that probably means there's something medically wrong with them and you need to seek shelter help as soon as possible. Okay. Look at that, I completely forgot the slide was here. But yes, if your baby is not eating, that's an emergency. Don't just keep troubleshooting day after day and hoping that tomorrow they'll eat. Baby's got to eat. If you are struggling after a feeding or two and you are making no progress, call the shelter. We will troubleshoot because there's probably something wrong with your kitten. Okay. So after you have been feeding your babies the gruel, they're getting closer and closer to weaning, truly weaning, which is going to be about that 6 to 8 week mark, which will probably be about a week after you get your kittens. You're going to start decreasing the amount of liquid in the gruel. So it's going to become more and more wet food. So you're going to do this gradually over about a week. And you're going to slowly get them weaned off of the liquid gruel and onto completely normal wet food. Once they're eating just wet food and kibble, you now have a weaned kitten. And you're going to want to make sure that they are completely weaned and doing well, still growing, before you sign them up for surgery. So the whole weaning process usually takes about 2 weeks. It's about a week of gruel, then about a week of weaning them off of the gruel, but it can take longer depending on how old your babies are and how sick they get. So that was all about gruel. If anyone has any gruel questions, now's a great time to post them. Otherwise, we'll hold them till the end. And now we're going to switch to monitoring and talking about the common problems that transitional babies get. So for those of you who have come to any of my classes, you know that the most important thing to monitor in any baby is, yes. You guys all get a gold star. Thank you. That fills my heart with joy. You are totally right. Number one, wait. Your babies should gain at least 15 grams a day. And we are going to want to treat them more like bottle babies, which is going to be weigh, feed, weigh. And so this means weighing them before their meal, feeding them, and then weighing them after. So that way we can see approximately how many grams of wet food they ate. We're going to weigh them at every single meal, so that's probably 3 to 5 times a day, especially when we first get them home, because we want to see consistency, we want to see growth, and we want to be notified very early if our babies aren't hitting that 15 gram a day mark. You're still going to have this, probably your morning weight, your 8 a.m. weight or whatever it is that you do in the morning. That's your day weight, and that one you're going to go, okay, on Sunday she weighed 300 grams. On Monday, she weighed 320. I hit my 15 gram a day goal, and then you're going to be happy with her progress. Throughout the day while you're weighing your transitionals, you're going to notice they're going to have huge swings in their weight. That's normal because these guys are eating wet food, which is going to digest differently than milk. So it's not going to be that 1 gram equals 1 mil calculation. They're going to be having solid poops, and they're going to be having big poops, which are going to change their weight a lot. They're going to be growing at a rate much faster than your bottle babies. So although we're treating them like bottle babies and using the weigh, feed, weigh method and using the 15 grams a day, you have to be aware that you're going to expect more variation But you have to figure out what is the variation that's normal for your baby, and figure out, what does their average day look like, and watch them like a hawk. Those first 72 hours after you bring your babies home, that's when 90% of your issues are going to crop up. So just be vigilant, be obsessive about weighing them, and you'll catch problems before they get really out of control. Apart from weight, the next most important thing you're going to monitor is their poop. So this is our standard poop scale, 1 being constipation, 7 being total liquid diarrhea. A 2, a 3, and a 4 are normal poops, whereas a 5, a 6, and a 7 are diarrhea. Oops. So if you see 5s, that is what I call iffy. It's probably the start of diarrhea. You should be concerned. You should be looking at their weight. You should be looking at their appetite and their attitude. If you think that this is, if they're not gaining weight, they definitely need to come in for a medical exam. But if you see 5s, 6s, or 7s and you are concerned about your babies, schedule that appointment ASAP, call the shelter, get them in that day. Don't wait on diarrhea. It is the most common thing you're going to see in your transitionals, and it is the most life-threatening. So when kittens have diarrhea, which is most of what you guys are going to be dealing with, they are going to have a tummy upset. They're going to have stomach pain. They're going to be nauseous, even if they're not vomiting. So, because I don't know if you guys have ever had nausea or food poisoning, or you've had stomach pain, appendicitis. What do you do, and by extension, what do you think kittens would do to show that they are in pain or are nauseous? Excellent. Hunched and tucked. The hunched and tuck. Excellent. Anything else? Apart from vomiting and not eating? The moan and the groan, right? Yeah, they might have that pathetic meow for sure. Excellent. That's pretty darn good, you guys. And yes, if you see signs of pain or nausea, absolutely need to call the shelter. So you guys nailed it, the hunched and tucked. This is a classic sign of tummy ouch. If they're literally protecting, this is called abdominal guarding. They're literally protecting their stomach and their intestines, and they're hunching their back and tucking their legs in under their center of gravity. They'll do this when they're standing, they'll do this when they're sitting, when they're lying down. So if you have a kitten with diarrhea, you can tell how uncomfortable he is by how he's lying. If he is sitting curled, tucked, just like you would be if you had food poisoning, that's a kitten that's in extreme distress. He's extremely nauseous. He needs medication, and you need to make sure that you're treating him aggressively. So make sure you are talking with the shelter and letting them know what you see. As your kittens undergo treatment for diarrhea, and as they start to get stronger and better, you're going to notice they're going to start stretching out, lying more comfortably, and they won't be so puffed and hunched and tucked. The classic, which you guys all know, is a kitten that doesn't feel good or is nauseous is not going to eat. So classically, you're going to have your gruel here. You're going to have this cute little baby. He's interested in the food. He's licking at it. We're spoon feeding him, and he gets distracted. He's totally not into it. So this is a kitten that is extremely nauseous and does not want to eat. So that little lick, that doesn't count as eating a little bit. That doesn't count at all. This is a kitten that is turning away from the food and says, I don't feel good. And this is an emergency. Another classic sign you're going to see with the babies is licking their lips. This is a sign of nausea. It'll often be excessive. They'll do it repetitively. They're going to do it out of context, so not necessarily around food. And it's going to be, if anyone here's a dog person, it's pretty similar to when a dog is anxious or nervous. They lick their lips when they really shouldn't be. So you can notice this in your babies. This little guy wanted to eat. He was nauseous, not feeling good. He's licking his lips, and he says, ugh. It's kind of like when you guys get dry mouth or you get nausea, you get that need to do that deep swallow and, kind of get it all out. So you can see he's totally excessively licking his lips to deal with his nausea. Okay. And the final sign I want you guys to be aware of is grinding their teeth. And this is when kittens will take a bite of food, they will chew it and then swallow it, but keep chewing and keep rubbing their teeth together. And it makes a very particular noise, which is hard to hear in this video. I need to get a better video, but I want you guys to listen very carefully. I won't talk during the video. And listen after he swallows to the sound that he makes afterwards, and look at his mouth and how he's moving it. This is very classic sign of nausea. Did you guys hear that kind of rough chewing sound that he made? Post in the chat if anyone didn't hear it or they want me to play it again. So if you see your kitten grinding their teeth, then that is a sign that they are nauseous. You need to make sure they're getting medication. You need to make sure they're under veterinary care. Don't wait. So to summarize, these guys that have tummy pain and nausea, and they probably have diarrhea coming, or it's already here, these guys are going to be lethargic. They're going to feel terrible. They're going to be hunched and tucked. They're probably not eating very well. They're going to be licking their lips or grinding their teeth. So if you see any of these signs in your baby, which are all of the things that we say in the foster manual, when to seek medical care, make sure you make that appointment right away, call them, and make sure that they get seen right away. Do not wait. And so just as a reminder, you can make appointments online. If there are no appointments available for that day, call the kitten number. They will squeeze you in at some point. Don't wait a day on a kitten that is nauseous or not eating. Okay. Oh, the train of my thought just completely left. So what I want you guys to be aware of is that these kittens are coming in off the street. They're losing their mother. They're having a complete change of diet. You were going to start feeding them Fancy Feast or Baby Cat or whatever it is that we have. They might be sick coming in off the street, or they might be brewing something. Very, very commonly, you're going to be asked to take home transitional kittens that have diarrhea already, are going to go home with treatment, or they look fine, and within 72 hours of you taking them home, they're going to start to show signs of diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, pain, not eating, weight loss, lethargy, dehydration. And you are going to have to be watching your new transitionals like a hawk, identifying the signs I just taught you, and then calling the shelter ASAP, getting them in as soon as possible to get medications. Hopefully you guys get lots of healthy transitionals that just need a little bit of syringe feeding and a little bit of gruel. But I want you to be prepared that we expect 30% of all kittens to get diarrhea at some point, and it's most often the transitionals. So I want to go over a couple of commonly asked questions, or just things that I think are fun facts that are going to come up in your time taking care of transitionals. So does anyone know what it means when a kitten is slurping or suckling on their food? They're going to put their face on their meat and look like they're nursing on the meat. Has anyone ever seen that? And Kazuhiro, I see your question. I'll answer that at the end. Okay, excellent. All right, Rebecca's seen it. That's a good start. So this has to do with brain development and mouth muscle development. Just like humans, baby cats slowly learn to use their mouth and learn to use their tongue in different ways. The first thing they learn is to suck. It's the only thing they can do, just like human babies. As they get more adept, they're going to learn how to lick, they're going to learn how to bite, and then they're going to learn how to chew. So you will notice as you have your transitionals, If you have babies that are just kind of biting their food and swallowing it, you know they're at this stage of like, I can bite food and then swallow it. But most often you're going to have these babies that are kind of nursing, licking on the food, taking the occasional bite, and then going back to nursing or licking on the food. And that's normal. That's because they're growing up, and that tells you something about the baby's age. They're probably 4 to 5 weeks old. They haven't learned how to chew yet. As they get older, 6, 7, 8 weeks old, you're going to notice them chewing just like an adult cat, and that's, a fully weaned baby. If you have a kitten which is sucking on their meat, they are trying to nurse on their meat. That is a very ineffective way to eat Fancy Feast. They're not going to be able to get the nutrients they need because they need to bite. That means your baby was, definitely too young to be weaned, and he's not ready for solid food. So you have two choices in those cases. One, you can either make your gruel more liquid and see if they will slurp it out of a dish, or you can attempt to bottle feed. But what's most important is that you identify it, because that's a baby that looks like they're eating. They probably will sit at the plate a long time nursing on that meat, but they're not actually getting any food in their belly. So that's a problem. Don't ignore it. It's very, very cute. Take a video, take a picture. It's very cute. But be aware you need to troubleshoot that formula to make sure he gets the calories he needs. Okay. Very, very common question we get asked. My kitten still isn't eating. Can I give them blank? So based on everything I just told you in this lecture, if a transitional kitten isn't eating, even after we've troubleshooted the gruel and we've tried, the syringe feeding and the spoon feeding, and they still don't want it, they're still rejecting the food. What do you guys think? Should we try giving them baby food, or should we go to the shelter for a medical appointment? Yes, yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So sometimes it can be helpful. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it can be helpful to get your babies going when they're, if you ever have a baby that's dying and they literally just need to get some sugar water in them, we can give them all sorts of wacky stuff like baby food. But these are not appropriate foods for baby cats. If your baby will only eat, if your kitten is only going to eat human baby food and he refuses to eat kitten food because he's so weak and so sick, you should have gone to the shelter yesterday. It is unacceptable to just feed your baby human baby food. It's not nutritionally complete. Humans are not carnivores, and these baby foods often have preservatives or onions or garlic or things which are toxic to kittens. I never recommend human baby food. Some people really love it, but it's just not something that's necessary with appropriate medical care and appropriate feeding of kitten food. If your kitten is being very fussy and you find that the only thing they'll eat is some canned food with a little bit of Fortiflora sprinkled on top, or a little bit of baby food on top, or a little bit of broth poured over, that's okay. As long as that little additional thing is a topper, it's just a little flavor enhancer. It's not their primary source of nutrition. So if you're messing around with toppers and you're trying to trick your baby into eating food, again, think something's wrong. I need to call the shelter. Don't just keep trying to boil chicken for them and hope they eat it. That's not going to be the solution. Does anyone have any questions about that? Or do we have any baby food advocates in the group? I know it's fun to feed them baby food. Yep, Kelly, thank you. Fortiflora is a probiotic powder that sometimes we use as a flavor enhancer for the kittens. But you're going to be, again, anytime you're feeding something to your babies that's not per the shelter's instructions, that's not in the manual, you need to be touching base with them. Don't just go making up crazy kitten food recipes without talking to the shelter first. Okay. The last thing I want to let you guys know about is the rainbow of poop. As you guys get your new transitionals, you're going to notice that a rainbow is going to come out their back end. At the very beginning, you're going to have great dark blackish brown poops, and that is because they've had mother's milk. as they start digesting whatever it is that you're feeding them, their poop is going to change color. So if you're feeding them Royal Canin, mom and baby cat, you're going to get milk chocolate Tootsie Rolls. If you're feeding them Fancy Feast, it's going to come out as a nasty gray clay. If you're feeding them Wellness, it's going to come out as a neon orange. This is all totally normal. It's just because of the flavor, the color additives in the food. So don't panic. If your baby has diarrhea, if your baby has blood in their poop, that's a problem. You need to come to the shelter for a medical appointment. But if the poop is solid and it looks normal and it just changed color, don't worry, that's totally normal because they're just digesting whatever flavor of food they have. All right, well, thank you so much, everybody, for participating and for coming this evening. This little dude and I say thanks. I know. If anyone else has any other questions about this class or other classes, please email coordinators@kittensfirst.org and we'll be able to help you out. After this class, you will receive a quiz. Please complete the quiz so you can get your level 3 certificate and then start taking care of babies. Oh, and Ashley, as a plug for the Foster Q&A group, don't forget that you guys can post all sorts of great questions there. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your Thursday.